Creating the I do, we do, you do. First step is to identify clear objectives and success criteria. So what is it you want your students to learn? What is it from your standards that they need to learn? And then how you're going to do that is write it on the board, right? Discuss with them, tell them, have them repeat it back to you in an all call. This is what we are learning. This is our objective for the day. And then double checking that it fits with your standards. If it doesn't fit with your standards, maybe it's not the best lesson. And then the third thing is what is going to make them successful, right? How can they prove that they do understand two-step equations? What does that look like? Number 2, creating the I do. So how are you going to explain, model, show the concept? What kind of steps are you going to have specifically to help your students understand this concept? And then a checkpoint. Where can you break this apart? For example, if I'm doing something that's really complex, maybe the I do section, I just want to do the first half of the concept, and then we're going to practice that step together, and then we're going to go back and learn the second step. Okay? Or it's a little less complicated, and I can just move ahead and do all 4 steps that they need to understand right away. And the materials. What do you need to show your students? What kind of videos do you have? What kind of graphs and charts and pictures go along with your explanation? Those need to be ready ahead of time. Number 3, planning the we do. How are students going to practice with guidance? So this is picking what is they are going to do to help understand this themselves. So are your problems that you're going to go together as a class? Or are we just going to have a class discussion using the concepts that I just talked about, right? Is it a group project that they're going to do together about these same concepts? Next is what can we do to help students participate, right? Remember in the I do sections, we shouldn't have a whole lot of student participation because it's very teacher driven. But now that we're in the we do section, we need to start having things built into our lesson that helps our students engage. So choral responses, think, pair, share, random selection, right? We just need to be careful with the random selection. If this is a very difficult concept, I need to understand and know my students, because if I have a difficult thing that I have discussed and I do a random selection and it picks a student that I know struggles, that's going to be a bad thing, right? So understanding and knowing your students is important if that is the method you want to use. Next is scaffolding. So what is it you can have that will help your students understand this concept bit by bit, and what can you start pulling away to get them to think more on their own? And the last thing of this section is when can we move on? So when can your students show you that they understand the concept to go try it by themselves? Because we don't want to move on until we know that they're ready. Because if they have misconceptions and now I've turned it over to them to go do their own work, that's not a good thing. So what can I do to understand where my students are and if they're ready, or what we need to go over again? Number 4 is the you do. So come up with what is it you're going to have your students practice. What materials do you need? Your handout should already be printed out, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, hold on a second, I'm going to go print out your worksheet now that you understand this, right? Those should have been printed out ahead of time. Clear instructions. Your students need to understand what is it they are supposed to do, right? They might understand that concept 100%, but they're not quite sure on how they're supposed to show that based on the handout you've given them. So make sure to go over the steps of the handout, the steps of the lab, or whatever it is they're doing by themselves so that they know what is expected of them. Number 5, checkpoints and questions, formative assessments, closing assessments. So have your students raise their hands during the we section. Call on your students to have them explain it to you. do an exit ticket at the end of class so you get an idea or a feeling of where your students are, right? You're not going to grade that, but one quick question about the objective or a problem you were working on can let you know if your students are where they should be. Number 6, resources and examples. So during your part of the presentation, right, the I do, what kind of material are you going to use, and why is that material the most effective and important? Right? Am I showing a video just because it's funny, or am I showing this specific video because it has these examples and it has it explained in this way that's going to be more helpful for my students? Okay, so make sure you have those ready to go before class starts. Number 7, differentiate planning for diverse learners. So what do you do when you have students that are a little bit behind, right? These kind of things you need to have prepared and have an idea of beforehand, right? So do you have an assignment that has similar questions, but you had to alter them a little bit so that they could understand them? Or do you have a plan for them to work with somebody else, right? So what we're doing here is just scaffolding and understanding that our students, some of them that are in unique situations, might not be able to do this assignment, but with these little extra things that can help, they would be able to. Number 8, transitions and pacing cues. So how long for each section? So the I do section should only be 5 to maybe at the most 10 minutes long, because if you're talking for any more than that, it's going to be too complex. The students are going to not be engaged and they're just not going to pick it up, right? So how can you break that into a smaller section? The we do section, how long do you take there? It is a very important section because this is where you're going to get your students to really understand the concept, but you also want them to have enough time to practice it on their own so that they can start storing this into their long-term memory. So make sure you have a plan of about how much time is it going to take. And it's okay if you have to change that up depending on where your students are, but you should have at least an idea of going in of how long each section should be. Verbal cues. So make sure your students understand and train them for, okay, when do they need to sit quietly and have their eyes on the teacher? When do they need to have their pencils in their hand and following along and talking to their neighbor? And when do they need to understand, okay, now it's my turn to do this on my own? Number 9, key phrases or questions. So come up with what questions will get your students to think the most. How can they take the concept that you've just taught them, and what will get them to think about their step that they have to take on their own, because then that's where the most learning is going to happen, right? So I shouldn't be telling them the same thing over again, but I can come up with some key questions or phrases that will help them understand. Number 10, closure and reflection. We talked about this a little bit, as this is something that teachers will rush through at the end of the lesson. So just making sure you have something at the end of class to wrap things up. So an exit ticket, or maybe you're going to have the whole class look at a problem that they should have all gotten to by that point. That way they can see, okay, I'm doing really good, I got this all correct. Or they can see, oh, I thought I was doing it the right way, but I wasn't. I'm going to need some more help. Or, now I do understand what I did wrong. Number 11, reflect and adjust. This is for the teachers. This is for you. What worked well? What didn't work well? What can you change for next time? Because most of us, right, are going to be teaching the same subject year to year. And so next year, you don't want to run into these same problems. That's what's so great about this method, is that once you've had the lesson and you understand the timing of everything, you understand what questions are helpful, you can make it even better year to year.